Now we're into the screen where we can bring in our drawing and start manipulating it so we can cut it out on the CNC router. There's lots of open options, but we want this open option that's right next to the floppy drive that says import vectors from a file into a current job. Now I'm going to go find that file that I downloaded. I called mine Eurobox Cabinet 1. I'm going to say open. Now, be careful with this screen. Make sure it looks exactly like mine does. A couple things we'll talk about in here. Auto-orientate largest faces up, that's good. Create circles for polygons and refit arcs to boundaries. Uh, SketchUp, one of the limitations, they don't actually draw real circles. They draw a bunch of line segments. They're real small line segments, but if you zoom in, you can see there's not arcs. So what VCarve will do is it'll actually put arcs over it. So you want that checked. This is the last box down here that we got to make sure is unchecked. Replace outer boundary for flat jobs only. So this is if I was just cutting out a shape, like let's say a letter G. I could click that, but I've got dados that I want brought in. That is not just a flat job. So I'm going to say I want to make sure this is not checked. And you can do either one of these and you're going to be just fine. Import all visible data and file means it's just going to take all the pieces that are components and bring them in. So all this stuff, gap between parts, if you're really crunched for space, we can make the parts closer together, but 1 inch is totally fine. So here's my parts. It doesn't look real exciting, but this is my top, I'm sorry, my bottom, my left and my right side, and this is my back. Now the grain of a 4x8 sheet goes up and down, so we're pretty well set here with how all this stuff is going to fit on our page. Now, one thing that we're going to have to be careful of is we want to be able to get 3 people's projects per sheet cut out. And with this, we're going to be able to easily get 2. We might have to have one person get their back cut out on a separate sheet, but we can easily get 3 people's sides and bottoms cut out. We're just going to be tight for how we're going to fit the back. So we'll cross that bridge here in a little bit, and I'll show you how we can do that. But let's start toolpathing right away. The first toolpath that we want to do is the rabbets or dados. So in the future, if we do a cabinet that is a face frame cabinet that does have dados like our Woods 1 project, we want to cut any dados or rabbets first before we cut the parts out. That way the parts are locked in place and they can't move. The smaller parts have a tendency to move when we're using the vacuum table on the CNC router. So my first step is going to be to come in here and I'm going to say ungroup objects back to original object layer. And you might have to do that on all of these, at least these two. And I want to work on this rabbit right here. So when I click on this rabbit, you'll see it's kind of annoying that we've got a red line and it turns it pink, so it's a very similar color. That same scroll wheel that we used in SketchUp can also be used in VCarve to zoom in and out of the project. We are using a round spinning cutter head. That means we have to overcut anything that we want square. So we have to actually extend the rectangle up so it cuts further than my project. Otherwise, imagine I had a circle right here and it just comes to the outer boundary, it's going to leave material in the corners. So on all of these, I want to extend my rabbets just a little bit. Now, when I click on it this time, it doesn't give me those boundaries, those handles that I can use to make it bigger. I can come over here and click on transform mode. So when I get transform, and it's okay if those touch. And those are the only rabbits that I have. So I should be all set here. Again, it's okay if these touch. This is wood that's no good. It doesn't matter. So now we've got our rabbits. I'm going to hold down shift to select both of them. So I've got both rabbits selected. I come up here and I'm going to do a pocket toolpath. This is when I'm going to say how deep I want the cut to be and what bit to use it. So now we got to look over here. And rabbits are always half the thickness of my project side. So my project side is 3/4. So I'm going to have a 3/8 deep rabbit. And I got to select the tool. I want to use the 0.375 end mill, and we get a little picture of what it looks like. So it's a straight cutting router bit. That's what we want to do most of the work on just about any CNC project that we use. If you don't have this, you can always come down here and hit new, and we'll call it whatever we want, and some of this stuff fills in for us. But I'm going to go to the one that I already created. Oops. If that happens, you just come back here and open it up again. The, the geometry, the diameter of the cutter is 3/8 of an inch. The deepest that it can cut in one pass is just a little over 3/4 of an inch. That's fine. Step over is 0.3. That means how much it moves over for every pass. 80% is good. We've got a spindle speed of 18,000. That's great. And a feed rate of 150. That's also great. And the plunge rate can stay right at 70. Make sure that this is tool number 1. You'll notice on our router we've got 8 different bays for tools. We want to make sure that it's picking up the right tool. So I can hit apply if I made any changes. That'll save the changes. And then I hit OK. And this likes to disappear on me. So we've got the right tool selected, the right number of passes. Move this over for us. We're fine just leaving this as an offset. Climb is totally fine. We want to ramp the plunge move. That means that when the router bit cuts into the wood, we don't want it to go straight down. We want it to ramp in because this is not a drill bit. It's a router. It needs to have some horizontal movement while it's plunging in. So that's a 1-inch plunge is totally fine. And we're going to call this rabbit. And I'm going to say calculate. Now it's going to give me a 3D view of what it wants to do. And I got one issue here. It's only cutting one of the rabbits. So I'm going to go back here. It looks like I accidentally deselected this one. So what I'll do is I'm going to close this, open up the Rabbit Toolpath, hold down Shift, make sure that is selected as well, and that is still selected. And I'm just going to hit calculate again, and it's still only doing that one. So if this happens, hopefully it doesn't happen to you, I'm just going to delete this and try it again. So what I'm looking for is that I have the pink line there and the pink line there. Now most of this stuff should be preset already, so I shouldn't have to do it again. So I caught another mistake that I made. Now I've got both of the rabbits drawn, but what was happening is that these two parts were touching. I don't know if you remember back when I had to make those rabbits bigger um, because we need to overcut. When they touched, they fused the tool path. So I just had to come back in here, grab this edit object. I just had to move, it was touching like that. I had to move it so there was a little gap there. And then everything went okay for me. So I just went back here, and then I say calculate, and we've got them both there. That shouldn't be a problem for you. I've never had that happen to me again. Almost done. Last step here is I want to cut out all of these parts. So I'm going to select all the parts by holding down Shift. This is called a profile cut. This is going to cut all the way around the panels. So I want to close this, and the profile cut is right here. This means that the router bit is going to follow the highlighted lines. So cut depth, we want it to cut through our project. Plywood, this plywood is 3/4 of an inch thick, 0.75, and we're going to make it 3/1000 deeper than that, so we're certain that it cuts all the way through. We're going to use that same end mill. We are going to say we want to cut on the outside of the line. Sometimes, depending on what we're cutting out, we want to cut on the inside of the line. Like if we're cutting out a hole, we want to be on the inside. And sometimes if we're tracing a shape, we'll want to be right on the line. But for our sake, we want the router bit to pass on the outside of the line. We don't need tabs. We're going to add a ramp though of 1 inch. And we can call this profile 1, and that's okay. We're going to get this warning that it's going to cut all the way through our material, and that's okay. We want to cut it out. So I hit OK. Now I see in my 3D view, I've got my back, my sides, and we're all good to go here. So the last thing you need to do is get the flash drive from me. It may be plugged into the CNC router, and we're going to say File, Save As, and you're going to save this vcarve file first to your network drive, just like I'm doing here. It's saving in my network drive, and we'll call it EB Eurobox 20119. And I would like you to save that file, but instead of doing EB, you would do your initials. So I would say KLS, and let's say we're block 3. So I'd be KLS3 2019, and I would hit save that on my network drive, and then come back one more time, and then save as, and I don't have the flash drive plugged in, but find the flash drive, save the exact same file on the flash drive, and then bring it over to me on the CNC router, and we'll look through all your tool paths, and if it's good, we'll plug it into the machine and cut it out.